Please welcome our brother, Tyler Mosher.
Hello, good morning to you all. Good morning. So, obviously, my name is Tyler. Throughout my life, I had on and off moments with God and my faith. There have been times where I was happy with my faith and who I was, and other times when I wasn't. But never did I stop believing. Now, on to my story. I was born in January of 1999. Before I was born, my mom had preeclampsia, and it put stress on me, so unfortunately when I was born, I was really weak and had problems breathing, so they put me in the NICU. The doctors told my parents I might not make it, but thanks to lots of prayers from my family, and by the grace of God, I'm able to stand before you today. Growing up, my dad and mom had split up due to my father leaving when I was 5. He had an accident as a teenager and was diagnosed with schizophrenia and other mental illnesses. Leading up to him leaving, he told my mom and later my brother and I, when we were old enough to understand, that he was hearing voices in his head. These voices had been telling him to murder my mom, brother, and myself. Of course, he knew better than to act on this. He decided to leave my mom to keep us safe and then see me again for 2 years. From the time I was a baby, my mom took me and my brother to church. She attended the Pentecostal church in Binghamton called Binghamton Assembly of God. I was dedicated to the Lord when I was a baby. We went to church until I was about 7, and then after that, I attended church with my grandmother at a Catholic church. While going to church, my father was going through rough times with his mental illnesses. My brother and I were not able to see him while he was in multiple hospitals and rehabilitation centers. Eventually, he was receiving the help that he was needed and was mentally stable enough to visit with us. Because of this, I started visiting with my father on Sundays, as it was the day my law guardian and my parents agreed upon in court. I stopped attending church to do so. Visiting was fun with my father, but previously, being an alcoholic, relapsed multiple times, which clashed with his medications and helped him with his schizophrenia and other mental illnesses. During these times of him relapsing and having trouble with his mental illnesses, we would stay home with my mom while he recovered. This continued on for years and years, which during this time I did not go to any church services. I still knew God existed, but I hadn't gone in so long I didn't know where to pick back up. Throughout school, I met and became good friends with multiple people, and these people that I surrounded myself with had never gone to church either. Because my friends didn't go to any churches, I was never extended an invitation other than my grandma, who invited me to the same Catholic church I went to as a kid. I never took her invitation though, because I didn't feel the Catholic denomination was as welcoming, nor did I feel like the Catholic church was for me. In high school, I still didn't attend church services, but probably the strongest connection with God happened during this time. I was in 11th grade, and this year was by far the most difficult for me. Chemistry is really hard, guys. And of course, my grandfather during this time, unfortunately, was becoming really sick. After being sick for months and being eventually put on hospice, he passed away on January 7th. Leading up to this, my mom was pregnant, who was now my 3-year-old brother. He's a huge troublemaker, let me tell you. But I love him. Not even a week after my grandfather passed away, my mom went into labor with him. This is when something miraculous happened. On the night he was born, my mom told me that at one point his heart slowed way down and almost stopped. They wanted to do an emergency C-section, but he was too far into the birth canal to do so. She was terrified and prayed to God for help, and suddenly this is where things get a little emotional. As she was praying to God, she saw my grandfather, who had just passed away, look down at her and smile. She said she could see him clear as day. As he looked at her and smiled, my brother's heart rate jumped back up, and within a couple minutes, he was born completely healthy. My grandma was in the room with my mom while she was giving birth. My mom didn't tell her about seeing him until a week later, in fear that she would upset him. When she did tell her, though, my grandma responded with, and I quote, "Wait, you saw him too? I didn't want to say anything because I thought you would think I was crazy," end quote. Both my grandmother and mom saw my grandpa and didn't even know the other had saw him too. This is when the moment I will never forget, and I'm sure it's a moment my grandma and my mom won't forget either. During the entirety of high school, I met this person who I got along with very well. Her name was Brianna, and we became great friends when I first met in 2015. Later, during Christmas break of my senior year, we were talking more than usual, and I couldn't pull myself away. We eventually scheduled the time to hang out, and on that day, January 2nd of 2017, I asked her out. She was there this morning, but she's in the musical, so if you're bored around 2 p.m. or so, she's doing the Addams Family at Shenango Valley High School. So you better be there, I'm going to be upset. A couple months later, Brianna invited me to attend church service here. I was very reluctant at first and didn't know what to think. It had been so long since I had been to church. She would ask me every day if I had an answer for her. Eventually I got the courage to try it and see how it went. I showed up one day, which that day was the same day that I met Sally. She's a sweetheart. I was very nervous, but was pleasantly surprised with how comfortable and welcomed I felt. I enjoyed it so much that I came back. This time I was coming every other weekend, so I could still visit with my father. Eventually, I started coming every Sunday, and I enjoyed every bit of it. I eventually came along to a choir rehearsal to see what it was all about, and inside joke, I very promptly joined the dark side with the basses. I started singing regularly and enjoying every minute of it. I've become more in touch with my faith and closer to God more than ever before. Being part of the church council, the choir, and happily helping out with VBS every year has been a blast. I am now in college, and although it can be a pain sometimes, God, my family, Brianna, and friends are helping me through it and keeping life interesting. I am in my last semester at SUNY Broome, thank God, and cannot wait to graduate this coming May. Some of these professors, let me tell you. Of course, I'm still young and have a long way to go, but I'm sure that along the way, God will guide me. Thank you. This has been my story so far.
And now, please greet our sister Elsa.
Good morning, everyone.
Thanks for the beautiful piano.
As I was jotting down my thoughts in preparation for giving my testimony today, I realized that there are 3 chapters in the story of my faith journey. The first 18 years of my life, the next 50 years, and the past 3 years. Chapter 1, the first 18 years of my life. I consider myself fortunate. I was raised on a farm in Vermont by 2 parents who exemplified what it means to lead Christian lives. In August of 1948, when I was 7 months old, I was baptized in a small Lutheran church that sat up on a hill in Proctor, Vermont. I attended church there every Sunday until I went away to college. When I was young, I loved going to Sunday school in the basement of the church. The basement was also a place for members of the church to gather for fellowship. Even to this day, when I think about the basement of St. Paul's, I can smell the coffee that was often brewing. I can also see the picture of Jesus hanging on the wall. At the reception in the basement after my father's funeral in January of 2006, I noticed the Lord's Prayer embroidered in Swedish that my father had given the church, and I was reminded of the times my dad spoke Swedish. Oftentimes it was because the adults did not want the children to know what they were saying. Hearing Swedish spoken was often accompanied by hearty laughs. When I was in 7th grade, I was confirmed at St. Paul's with one other person, Joanne, an 8th grader. Chapter 2, the next 50 years. I began to stray from the church when I went away to college. Only 1% of the student body at the University of Vermont was Lutheran. As a college student, church was simply not a priority for me. I was immersed in my studies and too busy and tired to spend any time looking for a Lutheran church to attend on Sunday mornings. How would I get there anyway? I met my husband Murray in the spring of my junior year at UVM. We were excited to announce our engagement the following December. Bernie was Catholic, and I knew that we would have to get married in the Catholic Church and raise our children in the Catholic faith. I didn't give it a second thought. As a college student, I didn't have a church of my own in the area. At the time, one church seemed to be as good as another. However, when I went home to tell my parents that Bernie and I planned to be married by a priest at the Newman Center at UVM, my mother was visibly upset and didn't say much the rest of our visit. I was very close to my mother, and I was heartbroken by her reaction to our news. The next time I saw my mother, she had accepted the idea and seemed excited for us. I knew my dad, who understood a lot about life, must have spoken to her, and I was relieved. Bernie and I met with the priest on several occasions prior to our wedding day. One day, I questioned why the Catholic Church didn't leave the decision up to us as to where we got married and how we would raise the children I hoped we would have. I will never forget the priest's response to me. He actually looked at me as though I had two heads and said, "What made you even ask that question?" In spite of everything, our wedding, 1 month after I graduated from college in 1970, was a joyous occasion. As a newly married couple, Bernie and I only attended church when we visited his parents in Lion Mountain, New York, a small mining town about 25 miles west of Plattsburgh. The fall after we got married, I started my teaching career, and Bernie was laid off at GE. For the next 4 years, we were busy managing 4 apartment buildings while he attended the university on the GI Bill, and I taught 4th grade. Getting by financially and school were our main priorities. Sunday mornings were for sleeping in. When I was 25 years old, I was hospitalized for treatment of a blood clot in my leg. Bernie and I had just spent a wonderful Thanksgiving with my parents, and my mother had driven up to visit me in the hospital that Wednesday. Friday night, I got a phone call from my brother-in-law informing me that my mother had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and was in the Rutland Hospital. I was sedated that night and was in a deep sleep when I was awakened at 6 a.m. the next morning. The nurse escorted me to a small room down the hall. When I walked into the room, Bernie was standing there. I knew something was drastically wrong when we made eye contact and my heart sank. He had come to tell me that my mother had died earlier that morning. I was devastated by the sudden loss of my mother, who had also become my best friend. I loved my in-laws, Leona and Walter. I considered them devout Catholics who attended church, not just on Sundays, but often during the week as well. However, I remember feeling confused one day when Leona introduced me as her wonderful daughter-in-law, even though Elsa is not Catholic, and I wondered what difference it made. At the time of my mother's death, I found out that it did make a difference that would hurt me deeply. Bernie's parents lived about 4.5 hours from my parents, but didn't show up for either my mother's wake or her funeral. Later, I learned that they had never set foot in a Protestant church and believed going to my mother's funeral in a Lutheran church would be considered a sin in the eyes of God. I needed their presence and support so much at the time and questioned the so-called Christian belief that gave rise to their action. This was the first time in my life that I felt my faith was being challenged. How could a loving and just God allow this to happen? I knew then that I would never become a Catholic. But I never went back on my word to raise my children Catholic. Lori, Justin, and Jeremy arrived in 1975, 1977, and 1981, and were baptized in the Catholic Church when they were infants. Even though all 3 of them were confirmed in the Catholic Church as well, Lori in Vermont and the boys locally, none of them attend the Catholic Church today. Throughout this very long chapter in my life, I often felt the presence of God, or what I referred to at the time as my guardian angel. There was never any other explanation for what happened. Shortly after Lori graduated from the University of Miami, we moved her into an apartment in Queens. Bernie and Lori traveled to New York in a U-Haul truck, and Justin and I followed in the car. All of a sudden, Bernie exited the busy highway in Queens. Unfortunately, Justin was unable to move lanes in time to follow the truck, and we were forced to drive to the next exit before getting off the highway. We pulled into a gas station, but the attendant claimed he didn't speak English. We had no GPS and no cell phone to get in touch with Bernie and Lori. It was a real dilemma in a big city. I began to give directions to Justin. I didn't know where the words that I was speaking were coming from, since I had no idea where we were and no idea where we needed to go. When we turned right onto a street in Queens, I had no idea it would lead us to our destination, and I was really shocked to see Bernie unloading the truck. He seemed oblivious to the fact that Justin and I had been among the missing, and I was a little upset with him. On Lori's 13th birthday, the children and I and one of Lori's friends piled into the car and headed to the video store to pick up some movies for Lori's party. As soon as we turned the corner and headed down the hill to Winooski Avenue, I noticed cars having difficulty, and my car began a slippery slide down the hill. I was able to get over onto the side of the road and stop the car. As we were waiting in the car, I glanced in the rearview mirror. I saw a FedEx truck come over the brow of the hill. I watched the truck begin to slide, and I knew it was going to hit us. On impact, my car did a 360 on the ice. The kids were screaming, and I was terrified. When it was over, we were welcomed into a warm house by a complete stranger and served chocolate chip cookies that had just come out of the oven. I know someone was watching over us that night. The truck had hit the wheel well of my car and caused $26 damage. A man driving a FedEx truck delivered the check to my house a few weeks later. That experience would remain with me for the rest of my life. In January of 2006, I was getting ready to return to school after the Christmas break. When the phone rang, it was my sister Judith. The news was not good. My 98-year-old father was dying, and the nurse said that I needed to make the 4-hour drive to Vermont as soon as possible. It was raining out, and I was very nervous because I knew the temperature would likely drop when it got dark, and the roads would be icy. I was still terrified after all these years to drive in bad weather. When I headed out of my neighborhood, the temperature was 35 degrees. I watched the temperature drop to 34 degrees, and I feared the worst. But by some miracle, during that trip north, the temperature never dropped below 33 degrees, and I arrived safely. I was able to be with my father when he took his last breath around 2 a.m. that night. I was leading a busy life, raising my children and teaching full-time, and didn't make time in my life or place in my heart for God. I thought I was getting along fine, living a life without a church. I believed in God and felt His presence at times, but I didn't have a relationship with Him. Bernie, on the other hand, attended church every Sunday and on holy days and enjoyed singing in the church choir. Then Bernie got sick. He still enjoyed singing in the choir, but was no longer physically able to climb the stairs to the choir loft at church. He finally made the decision to leave the church he loved and had attended regularly for many years, and he became a member of a neighboring Catholic church, where he was able to sing in the choir without climbing stairs. Shortly after that, the choir at his previous church moved downstairs. Unfortunately, the move came too late for Bernie to benefit from the decision, but I'm sure other older members of the church there have reaped the benefits of the move. Bernie and I were on a long and difficult journey as he dealt with the progression of congestive heart failure and the constant pain of neuropathy. Eventually, Bernie did not have the lung power to sing in the choir or the stamina to attend church. At first, he had someone come to the house to give him communion. The gesture meant a lot to him as a Christian, and he enjoyed the company. As time passed, there was less contact from his church until it eventually dwindled to no contact at all. I tried to call a few times and spoke to an answering machine. No one returned my calls. It was a lonely time for me, and I felt bad for Bernie. I didn't believe that God was walking with us. I felt that the Catholic Church had abandoned Bernie in his greatest time of need, and that I didn't even have a church. I had a wide circle of friends, but still felt alone on this journey. I was in search of something, but I didn't even know what that something was when I entered this sanctuary for the first time in March of 2016. At the time, Bernie was in rehab at Elizabeth Church Manor after a fall in the kitchen that left him with a hairline fracture in his shoulder, and I felt like a lost soul. My son Jeremy and his wife April had started attending this church after they brought me with grandson Brody to breakfast with the bunny, and were taking classes with my 16-year-old grandson Cameron in preparation for becoming members of the church. I wanted to see what this church was all about, which is where chapter 3 of my faith journey began. Walking into the church for the first time nearly 3 years ago changed my life. When I entered the sanctuary, I received a warm welcome and felt immediately at home. I was moved by the beautiful music that filled the space, especially the singing of the Lord's Prayer. I connected with God that Sunday, and I returned to Elizabeth Church to visit Bernie with a strength I did not know I had or even know I would need in the coming months. I have always been a shy person and sometimes afraid to speak up, but God gave me the words I needed to advocate for Bernie in his time of need. It was during this time that I began to realize that Bernie and I were not alone on our journey. I was just looking in the wrong place. At Elizabeth Church, God brought Bernie and John Tomasky, a member of this church, together. They became fast friends and found comfort in each other's sense of humor. They also understood each other's health struggles and were able to support each other. It was a true gift for both men. I also met Pastor Jose and his wife at Elizabeth Church and realized that it was not God or the church that let us down. It was Christians that had, in the words of Adam Hamilton, gotten it wrong. At the same time, God had led me to the Endwell United Methodist Church. I became a member of the church in June of 2016, 2 weeks before Bernie died. The timing was critical for me. I found an inner peace here, and even though I didn't really know anyone and chose to sit by myself, I no longer felt the loneliness that had plagued me for so long. Even though Bernie had been sick for a long time and the cardiologist had told him nothing more could be done, his death was sudden and unexpected. I thought I would be at his bedside holding his hand when he passed, and I grieved over the fact that he was alone at the time, or so I thought. As I have grown in my faith, I am comforted knowing that God was with him. Becoming a widow at the age of 68 was difficult, but I no longer felt alone. Church became a refuge for me. I found comfort in attending church and being part of an active and caring congregation. As time passed and I retired from teaching, I became more involved. I've enjoyed volunteering for various events, especially the mobile food pantry. I have also attended small group meetings that have helped me to grow in my faith. I feel my life has purpose. There is a song called The Keeper of the Stars that a good friend of mine asked me to listen to recently. She said it was perfect for me. It is a song about divine intervention. Last fall, I found out that my 7-year-old granddaughter Kenley kept me in her prayers every morning. At Christmas time, her parents told me that Kenley, who had just turned 5 when her grandfather died, had been praying every day for over 2 years for my happiness. When she found out that her prayers had been answered, she was overjoyed and gave the news one of these: yes! So that is where the 3rd chapter of my story ends for now. I am actively involved in the church and am growing in my faith and in my relationship with God. I have learned to slow down and listen for guidance from God in terms of where He needs me to serve Him. I am at peace and I feel my soul has been healed. Thank you.